Okay, thanks, Garrett. I'm going to exercise the prerogative of the chair and make about 90 seconds of quick comments, and then I want to see if there's any crosstalk among the panelists. I know Barry's already got a little crosstalk of his own here. So let's assume that we've got a problem that can't be dealt with by bankruptcy law that's in place. So we say that this is an extraordinary situation, and maybe I need the mic here. Yeah. This is an extraordinary situation, and we need a fix, or the economy is going to go down the tubes. We've seen this several times, and of course we've seen it recently. And then you can look at it the way Michael was looking at it and say, well, let's just try to get the most efficient solution that we can come up with that's politically acceptable. Let me suggest that we've got another problem that's playing in here, and several people have alluded to it, which is the problems that you get into from disregarding the rules of the game. So Larry the Liquidator Garfield and other people's money said, just tell me the rules and I can play within them. And I think that's the way business is. Once you start changing the rules, then transaction costs increase and you've got a sort of basic problem. So the question is, how do you fix that problem? How do you address that problem of changing the rules that could reduce capital market efficiency that you get from extraordinary intervention? What kinds of fixes would prevent that? And we've got various fixes on the table. Garrett was talking about a speed bankruptcy fix that might fix bankruptcy law. Let me suggest that you cannot make black swans extinct. In other words, whatever you do, there's always going to be a this time is different problem. And that this is a very difficult problem to deal with, of how do you guarantee that you're not going to have some government response along the lines that Michael was suggesting that's politically acceptable even if it violates current law. Do you give it to some politically accountable person, the way Tim was suggesting? Or maybe you build in a market alternative that at least makes black swans less frequent, more able to be dealt with by contract. I think maybe Barry's going to talk about that. But let me just, all I want to say, I don't have an overall solution to this, but I want to say, to me, the problem is, how do you deal with these extraordinary interventions without unsettling capital markets that result from unsettling capitalist expectations? Barry.
Thanks. And I do want to pick up on the last comment that you made, as you suggested, and also respond to Garrett. I'm somewhat mystified that economists have discovered debt-to-equity conversions. It's what bankruptcy has always done. Bankruptcy reorganization, as opposed to liquidation, in which there's just a distribution of assets, is what reorganization refers to is not the investment side of the firm, it's the financial side of the firm. What you do is you eliminate the debt, you give or reduce the debt, you give the old creditors new shares and move forward. The thing is, though, it's messy and it's complicated, there is this thing that we refer to as absolute priority. So Garrett says, well, maybe we'll just convert some of it and maybe some of that and a little of that, and I just hope it doesn't violate absolute priority too much. Well, if you do it quickly like that and violate absolute priority at all, it is not even arguably, with all respect, not even arguably within current law. It's just, you can't do it. You can't just decide, well, it's, it's 10 o'clock. I think by 10:10 we'll pick some debt to convert, and that's the one we'll convert. These firms have complex balance sheets, and in order to make sure secured creditors get paid in full before unsecured creditors get paid anything, and and to make sure that there is fair and equal treatment across unsecured creditors, the bankruptcy process needs to move forward. That's what current law requires. Now, I don't want to get into takings. This is the Federalist Society. That'd be a great topic. We could talk about this all night. I don't want to get into takings and the possibility that Barney Frank or someone else could pass a law saying, guess what, we don't care about absolute priority anymore. All we want to do is do it quickly, so I'll just pick this $200 million of debt and I'll convert this, and just to make it so there's not, quote, too much of a violation of absolute priority, we'll throw a bone and convert some of this other stuff, and it'll all be approximately right. Whether or not that would constitute a takings, which it might not because the bankruptcy law already does something like this, it's really bad policy, I would argue. I mean, it's horrific policy just to decide at the last minute, well, we need to move something quickly, so the way I'm going to do it is just pick my favorites. For one thing, as Tim pointed out, you're going to get some debt more equal than others based on politics, and as the Chrysler and GM case showed. So I think this quick bankruptcy or this conversion outside of bankruptcy would be problematic for the reasons ex post would be problematic for the reasons we've discussed, and this is precisely why Treasury didn't do it. It's why it didn't want AIG in bankruptcy. It's why because it's why it didn't want other firms in bankruptcy, because the bankruptcy process, when the capital structure of firms is messy and when what you have are conflicting obligations, everybody says, I have a contractual right to get paid, and then you have to sort out who has priority among those conflicting contractual rights. That takes time, and the fear was that the capital markets were going to collapse in the process. Therefore, I think what needs to be done, and I want to say I am the hugest fan, my entire career is based on having, going back to a scholarship I did in the 1990s, I'm a huge fan of having an automatic conversion of debt to equity, the way that Garett champions. But I think it's folly to try to do it ex post after the cat's out of the bag. What needs to be done is that this automatic conversion needs to be built into the DNA of the firms and into their capital structure. This is something I called the chameleon equity back in the 90s. The current jargon in the debate is a living will. That is what firms what firms need to do is have a system so that if there is a default, which can be simply defined by the courts, that is simply a failure to pay, we take a tranche of the debt that that has lowest priority. We convert that to equity. This will return the firm potentially to solvency in exactly the way that Garett points out, because now and as Stiglitz points out, I mean, these are brilliant people. Because the debt obligations of the tranche that's been eliminated no longer exist. They become the new equity holders. If there's still an inability to pay, you knock out the next tranche and so on. The advantage of doing this over bankruptcy is it can happen automatically upon default.